Let's call today's guy Thomas. Not the disciple, though the parallel isn't accidental. Thomas had been a Christian, or something close to it, for most of his adult life. He grew up in the church, got saved at a youth camp at 15, and meant it. Got married in the church, baptized his kids in the church, showed up most Sundays, served occasionally, gave when he could. But somewhere in his late 30s, without really noticing it, it happened. Thomas had drifted. Not away from Christianity. He still believed all the right things, but away from the living, breathing, actually changes how you live version of it. His faith had become a framework instead of a relationship, a set of positions he held rather than a person he knew. He could tell you what he believed about the resurrection. He just couldn't tell you the last time the resurrection had actually meant something to him on a Tuesday. Every Easter, he'd feel a flicker of something, sit in the service and remember what it was supposed to feel like, drive home with that familiar sense that he needed to do something about the gap between what he believed and how he was living. And every year, nothing changed, until this one. Top of the morning to you. I'm Brian with Kingdom Family Leader, and this is day 9 of our series, Better Than Going to Church on Easter. 9 days ago, I asked you to sit with a question. Why did Jesus die? Today, I want to ask you one more. What would be different in your life if you actually let Easter change you? Here's what shifted for Thomas, and it wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with a vision or a lightning bolt or a moment that could point to and say, that's when it happened. It came from 9 days of sitting with questions he'd never let himself sit with before. Why did Jesus die? Who around him didn't know where they were going? Had he looked at the actual evidence for what he claimed to believe? Had he ever opened the Bible with his family in any kind of intentional way? Was there a Ray in his life he'd never told? A close friend like Todd he had never been complete with? A Dave he could have invited? And then, what had he built in the ordinary weeks to keep any of this alive? The answers weren't comfortable, but they were clarifying. And clarity, even uncomfortable clarity, is a gift, because you can't build in the right direction until you know where you actually are. Thomas didn't overhaul his life after Easter. He didn't quit his job or start a ministry or become something substantially different overnight. He did these things. He read Matthew 28 with his family the Saturday before Easter. His wife cried a little. His teenage son asked a question Thomas didn't have a full answer to. And instead of faking it, Thomas said, I don't know. Let's find out. And they did. He called a guy named Ray, an actual Ray, someone he worked with, someone he'd prayed for 2 years and never said a word to. He said something honest, imperfectly, awkwardly, but he said it. And he signed up for a men's group at his church, not because he felt like it, because he knew himself well enough to know he wouldn't sustain anything alone. 3 things, none of them spectacular, all of them real, and a year later, when Easter rolled around again, Thomas was a different man, not because of a feeling he'd had at a service, because of decisions he'd made in the ordinary days that followed. Here's what I want to leave you with after 9 days. The resurrection is the most important event in human history. Full stop. A dead man walked out of a tomb and changed the trajectory of everything, including your life, if you let it. But the resurrection doesn't do its work in you automatically. It doesn't change you by proximity. You don't absorb it by sitting in the same building where it gets talked about once a year. It changes you when you encounter it, when you let it land, when you stop treating Easter like a holiday you attend and start treating it like a reality you live inside of. That's what this series has been about. Not church attendance, not tradition, not checking off a box. Encounter. An encounter always leads somewhere. It leads to your family around a Bible. It leads to a phone call you've been putting off. It leads to an invitation that might feel awkward but comes from a real place. It leads to the Sunday after Easter, and the one after that, and the ordinary Tuesday when nobody's watching and you're still there. Because that's what a changed man looks like. Not spectacular, just different. Consistently, quietly, genuinely different. I want to close this series the same way we started it, with a question. 9 days ago, I asked you and you sat with, why did Jesus die? Today, I want you to sit with this. What is one thing I'm going to do differently because of what I've encountered this week? Not 5 things, 1. Maybe it's finishing the conversation you started with someone this week. Maybe it's showing up the Sunday after Easter. Maybe it's making that phone call. Maybe it's as simple as telling your wife or your kids, this year Easter meant something to me, and I want to tell you why. One thing, concrete, decided before the feeling fades, because the tomb is empty. That's not a holiday. That's not a tradition. That's not a feeling that comes and goes with the season. That's a fact that changes everything. Go live like it. Your sins are forgiven. Believe Christ died for you, and you be blessed.